Hey guys, this is TV Slippings Podcast. This is Sid.
This is Swetha.
And this is Harini.
We're going over episode 10. The title is
Gone.
Sid is back from the dead.
I am back
Revived.
from the dead. Apologies from stepping out of the crypt in the last podcast. I was recovering. But yeah, let's go around and get everyone's thoughts on the episode. What did you guys think?
First, I wanted to shout out to feedspot.com for featuring our podcast on a top 10 Mr. Robot podcast list. Very honored, and thank you, Feedspot.
Yes, thank you, FeedSpot.
Yes, thank you. Very grateful, very humbled. I believe the guy who emailed us is Anuj. Thank you, Anuj, for featuring us.
We never expected that. It totally made our day, and super pumped.
Definitely.
Yep. So, Swetha, what did you think of the episode?
I liked it, and I didn't like it. I thought it was a great character development episode for DDP and Darlene, and we'll talk about the details later on. I just thought it was a little bit weak that Darlene's big, coming of age moment was going to Hungary by herself. That was a very difficult thing for her to come to terms with and reconcile with after everything we've been through, and they've been through the whole series. It didn't really just sit right for me that this was something that she was freaking out over. But other than that, we got some great surprises. I loved seeing Irving this episode. I loved Leon's and DDP's moments. So overall, some really, really great moments as well.
What did you think, Harini?
I have to disagree with Swetha. I really enjoyed this episode. It may not have been so action-packed as the rest of the season has been, but I really enjoyed the slower pace and getting to dive a little deeper into Dom and Darlene's relationship. As far as her going to Budapest to Hungary, that trip, I think it was bigger than that. I think it was definitely a metaphor for everything that she's been going through and kind of coming to terms and accepting all the bad things, all the shitty things that's happened to them over the course of the last few seasons that we've seen her go through. And this is a big deal that Cisco and her wanted to do, something that she made fun of him for. And for her to go on her own, I think she did a fantastic job in that scene where Dom is saying, hey, I don't think I can go. And Darlene has incredible acting, or the actress is doing some incredible acting there. You can really feel the emotion. You can really see how much, how afraid she is in that moment to really step out of this whole world and move forward and leave it behind. So I did really like the episode in that aspect, because that is going to be, we're going to have that kind of closure at some point. So I did like how they did that in this episode. And I obviously loved Dom's whole thing. She's great too.
Yeah, I agree with you, Harini. And again, kind of echoing with what you were saying, disagree with you, Swetha, a little bit.
That's all right.
I get what you're saying about how, Darlene's done so much crazy stuff throughout these 4 seasons where it seems like it's far bigger than taking a flight to Budapest.
She literally murdered someone, let's not forget.
Yeah, I agree. She's done some very crazy stuff that you would think, hey, taking a flight to Budapest isn't a big deal. But I think in those moments, Darlene had a purpose. She was focused. She had something she was working towards. And these were all steps in that plan to achieve her goals. This is just a normal thing. And I think when it's one of those moments in the show where it's like when you're trying to get all this stuff done, your adrenaline's running. And then when you finally get a chance to just relax, you feel incredibly tired because your adrenaline drops. And I think this was a moment for Darlene where something so normal as going to Budapest caused so much anxiety because it was something that she's never done. She's never done anything like this on her own. She's never taken a road trip. She doesn't know what to do. And to be on her own was something that she's struggling with, even if it's something that's so normal that every person in the world does it in their everyday life. She doesn't know how to do that. And I think bigger than that is the fact that she's not doing this for herself. She was doing this more as a tribute to Cisco because that's something he wanted. And so she felt this sense of responsibility and obligation for him to do something that he wanted to do, that he tried to convince her to go, for them to escape or run away and be safe, live their lives away from all this bullshit. He tried so many times. And she was the one who said no every single time. So there's a lot of guilt that was packaged with this innocuous trip to Budapest, which wasn't as innocuous as it's felt on the surface.
I think that's fair. And I think probably the argument that is the strongest is Darlene was just afraid to be alone with herself and close the chapter on everything that's happened and try to move forward. And I think that's what she was afraid of most. And like you said, Harney, this is kind of like a metaphor for that chapter and for her facing that challenge. And, you know, at the end of the episode, she figures out like, okay, I can do this. I can do it on my own and I'm going to be okay. I just thought, you know, it was just a hard sell for me that it was the trip to Budapest that made her come to that realization, or that was the thing that she was struggling with this whole episode. But I see both of your guys' points. It's fair.
Yeah, I think it's the combination of the trip to Budapest, but also what you said, that Dom said, no, I'm not going to go with you. And her brother was not going to go with her. And I guess now that I think about it, the reason her brother isn't going is he has something he needs to do. He has a purpose. Dom's not going because she has a job. She has family. Darlene is like a kite in the wind. She has no anchor. She has nothing. And so for her to just say, I need to go to Budapest, I need you to come with me, she needs that as an anchor. Like, I need someone to like help me get through this because I have nothing. I have no purpose right now.
That's fair. That's fair. I guess I always kind of saw Darlene as a character like that. Like, I imagine that before she was with Cisco, she was always kind of someone who was like that. Someone who wasn't very grounded, kind of drifting from one thing to another. And so I see how it's very challenging and emotional to come to terms with that and figure out what comes next. Especially when Angela's death, Cisco's death, Trenton and Mobley's death seemed to hit Darlene the most, because we barely have seen Elliot process any of that. And Darlene's been processing it in a very, very real way. I can't help how I feel. I just feel like this trip, although it represents so much more to her, at the end of the day, to me, I'm like, well, just go or don't go. Like, why are you hanging all of these, you know, hopes and emotions on this one trip? Doesn't really make all that much sense to me, but I get what you're saying.
I'll just say one more thing and we can jump into the recap. I think you're right. I think your description of Darlene is 100% accurate for what they've showed in the show. She was adrift from, you know, person to person, from city to city and purpose to purpose. She had no home base. She was just clinging on to other people. And I think that's what was great about the ending for her. She came to that realization that she doesn't need to do that anymore. You know, she can be her own person. I mean, I think you love this quote from Leon when he calls her a boss. You know, I think it's like a little thing, but it's something that he so obviously recognized in her that she has difficulty recognizing in herself.
That's true. Absolutely true. So
that was reinforced throughout the episode.
To jump into the recap, the episode starts off with DDP in the hospital recovering from surgery. And an FBI agent tells her that there's going to be an investigation, and Dom just can't see her family just yet. That she essentially can't be trusted to see her family just yet until she's cleared and it's known that she's not still working for the Dark Army. And just the look on Dom's face, it just feels like rock bottom for her, where she's like, you've got to be kidding me. I can't see my family after everything I've been through. And so that's a rough scene. Any thoughts on the scene before I move on?
I think the only thing is she's watching the news channel and she finds out that Zhang was White Rose. Mm-hmm. And she mentions, you know, the scene we saw, you know, I think in season 2, where Zhang is showing her the dresses, and she kind of puts 2 and 2 together, saying, I guess in her own way, she was trying to tell me who she was.
Yeah, that was cool. I liked that.
I think also a big detail in that new scene is that White Rose has not been captured and is not dead. So
correct.
She got away from the FBI, but her identity has been revealed.
Just going back to that scene that DDP refers to when he's showing her the dresses, why do you think that White Rose was trying to tell her about that, about who he really is?
On a surface level, I think White Rose was intrigued by DDP
a
little bit. I think that's when DDP shares the story about how she was almost going to be engaged and there was like a breakup at the time. I honestly think that that's one of the most human moments we've ever seen White Rose. And
Yeah.
she was honestly just sharing. But you're right. Maybe there was some other deeper purpose to it. But I honestly think that it was just her sharing with someone she found really interesting.
Well, Sweta, actually, I think you kind of answered it. That story that she tells White Rose about her wanting to get engaged and all of that. I think she was going to get engaged to a man potentially, and that wasn't like who she really was, and she realizes that. And I think White Rose may have found that or saw that implication in her story and realized we're very similar. We're more similar than we think.
Definitely. And so DDP leaves the hospital against medical advice.
Which is crazy.
She doesn't have anyone to drive her home from the hospital. Pretty sad.
Yeah.
But she comes home and pops some pills, and it's Percocet, as pain medication from her surgery. And she makes a grilled cheese sandwich.
Looks so
with
good.
mayo.
Yeah.
I've never
I
seen
think
anyone
butter.
make.
It was butter. No?
It looked like mayo.
I thought she was just like grilling it to make it crispy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it looked really delicious though.
I don't know. It was kind of burnt.
I like it that way.
A very burnt grilled cheese sandwich. But Darlene shows up and she's pleading with Dom, saying, we have to go. You can't just be eating your sandwich here. You can't just chill here. And they go back and forth, and Dom's like, I'm not going with you. What's your plan? You don't have a plan. I'm not running away. And Darlene tells her, you can't just sit around here like waiting to be killed by the Dark Army. You have to leave. You have to come with us and give yourself a chance. And I thought this was interesting. Darlene finally breaks Dom's Alexa, and that's the thing that actually convinces her. I couldn't believe that. But she just yells at her and says, this Alexa isn't your friend. You have to come with us. And then they show up at a motel. Darlene and Elliot have a moment where Elliot tells Darlene he has to go to Washington Township, and Darlene says, yeah, I'm not coming with you. This is it for me. I'm done. I thought there was another really sweet moment between them when Darlene gives Elliot the phone saying, I'll let you do the honors, which is the final step of the hack, redistributing the money. And Elliot tells Darlene, no, this should be you. This is your win, not mine.
So
and
awesome.
I loved that because I think we were talking about it the last podcast where Darlene was really a mastermind the whole last episode, where there's no way the hack would have taken place without Darlene. And even going back to virtual realty, she's the one that even picked up on the fact that Olivia's access was not going to be enough, that they had to break into virtual realty. She did all of the research for that. And so it really is like 80% Darlene and 20% Elliot, although he did do all the background research into the Days group and things like that. So I thought that was a great moment. Great moment.
Yeah, it was a great scene. One small scene we didn't go over is Elliot looking over the files that Philip Price gave him about White Rose's project. Mm-hmm. And we see some quick screenshots. There wasn't anything that we could, really pull that could really give us some insight on what the plan is.
Proton interactions.
Yeah, that was something that caught my eye as well.
Washington Township
was mentioned. But either way, he, for whatever reason, takes apart the USB and just has the chip itself, the board, and he's smoking outside. And that's when Darlene rolls up. But I absolutely loved the scene between Elliot and Darlene. I don't know. I have a soft spot for all the brother-sister scenes.
TV siblings.
TV siblings. For whatever reason, it felt like, I guess for both of them, they felt like they weren't going to see each other again.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
For a while, not forever.
Yeah, it just felt like there was a finality to their goodbye. Yeah. But I think we're going to see Darlene again for sure. And I think Darlene's going to see Elliot again. But yeah, I don't know. It was a great moment. And like you said, for him to, again, reinforce to Darlene, like, hey, you're pretty fucking good. Give yourself some credit. This is your win. Them hugging was great. And then him saying, I've never been on a road trip, but I recommend getting some Sour Patch Kids.
I love in his monotone, I recommend getting some Sour Patch Kids.
And I loved how he said to her, I need to do this. I'm not done yet. There's one final chapter for him, and that's going to Washington Township.
And you know what's interesting? I think for the first time in the whole entire show, they were both completely on the same page.
Yeah.
Where he wanted her to go to Budapest and essentially get away from this entire situation. And she was perfectly okay with him doing what he needs to do on his terms and things like that.
Yeah.
And not joining him.
Exactly. And, you know, Harney, I wanted to get your thoughts on this because you had the theory that Darlene's going to eventually meet up with Elliot and maybe she's the one who's going to, you know, destroy the project. But going back to the opening scene from the last episode where Mr. Robot says Darlene is the key to Elliot and maybe bringing out this fourth personality because she brought it out before. Why do you think Mr. Robot didn't pop up and say, hey, Darlene, you have to come with us, or you can't let Darlene go away? How come this happened if Darlene is supposed to be so critical?
No, that's a really good point. Not sure. But I also feel like Mr. Robot doesn't always pop up whenever he needs to. I do feel like Elliot has some control over when he is allowed to come and not. And I think we see that even after he finds out the horrible truth about his dad. He even says, like, hey, sorry, I kind of put you in a timeout for a little bit there. And so that implies like he does have some will and control over, hey, you're allowed to come talk to me now. Hey, you're not allowed to come talk to me right now. So I don't really think necessarily it had anything to do with that per se. But now that you bring that up, that is a good reason why Darlene probably, not that she knows, but I think just story-wise, I think that's why they have her stay and not go to Budapest, because I think she's going to be a very critical part to the next few episodes leading up to the finale.
Yeah, I thought that when Elliot was going through the files, I kept thinking, White Rose said, once we show Elliot what we're working on, he will see we're on the same side. He'll realize we need to be allies. So I was very curious to see Elliot's reaction when he looked at the files. And then to see him outside smoking, he just seemed so serene. Like, almost like, okay, cool, that's what it is. And I wonder if him and Mr. Robot were like in sync in that, hey, whatever you want to do, Elliot, we're going to do, and we're just going to go with it. And I think that's what I took, and that's why Mr. Robot didn't say anything, because I think he feels like, I got to let Elliot do what he needs to do. And if he needs to go to Washington Township and see what this project is about and destroy it, cool.
I think I completely agree with you, Sid. And that tells us another thing, that whatever this other secret is about this fourth person, about this other persona, doesn't really have anything to do with the project or anything to do with really potentially Washington Township. And I think that's why Mr. Robot's totally fine with him destroying it or carrying on with this last plan that he has. I think it has something separate, and it's only has to do with Elliot himself and nothing to do really with White Rose or anything like that.
It's possible that he actually wants him to go to Washington Township. And I agree with you that maybe the other one has nothing to do with it, but maybe there's something to show him about that place.
Yeah, that was actually my next question for you guys. So, and by definition, this means Elliot knows, but do you think Mr. Robot knows what White Rose's project is prior to, looking at these files? Did he have some insight from, the past? And is that a memory that's locked away in Elliot?
Potentially. It may have been something. I do feel when White Rose says in the beginning of season 3, I think, that his dad worked with me on this project, or worked with me in general, and now his son is working for me. I do feel like when he refers to his dad, Edward Alderson, he may have been working on the project even way back in the 80s. Whether that means Elliot knows, I'm not really sure. Maybe his dad had mentioned it in passing or talked to him about it at some point and it's there in the back of his mind. Or he may have been even working on it at the start of the series and we didn't even know.
Sid and I always go back and forth on that. Did Elliot's dad and Angela's mom know what they were working on? And
I think so.
I think hopefully they go over that and they make it clear, like, how much did they know about the project? How much were they willing? Did they understand the risks involved? Mm-hmm. And I hope the show gives us all of that. To circle back to the episode, DDP and Leon's reunion is hilarious.
Yeah.
Because DDP walks in and she's like, holy shit, like, is this a trap? Like, what the heck is going on? Why is he here? And Leon's like, have we met? And DDP's like, of course we've met. Don't you remember the barn? And Leon's like, doesn't ring a bell. And he slowly realizes, and he's like, oh yeah, that's how we met. And he casually makes a movie recommendation to Dom, 3 Days of the Condor, which of course is now on our movie list because we have to see what
watch
that's
it now.
about.
I've always wanted to watch it, but for the same reasons that Leon gives of why he hasn't watched it, I've always avoided it. It is very 70s, the way it's filmed and how it looks, but it's by Sidney Pollack, a good director. So, and it's a spy thriller, so it's really worth watching.
That sounds great.
Yeah, Robert Redford.
Yeah.
And then we realized that Leon was recruited to drive them safely from New York to Boston via the scenic route. And during this drive, DDP is trying to come to terms with having to adopt a new identity. And it felt really ironic seeing DDP, an FBI agent holding a fake passport.
Yeah, so funny.
It's just like, wow, like what a role reversal, and she's really trying to figure out how to make it work. And they make a pit stop, and Darlene takes DDP out to the middle of the park. And that's when Darlene redistributes the money to everyone's eCoin wallets. And you slowly see people in the crowd receiving the money. And it was a great moment for Darlene, I think. In her eyes, everything maybe was not forgiven, but they succeeded in redistributing all the wealth of these really evil people and benefiting the small people at the end of the day. So while the 5/9 hack was kind of a disaster, they made up for it in some way by achieving this hack. So it was a great moment for Darlene.
Yeah, it was a great moment. There were some really funny lines and scenes when they're waiting outside the bathroom. We get a quick interaction of Darlene's odd conversation with Leon that was on the same topic when she's saying like, oh, where's Leon? Or Dom saying, where's Leon? Darlene says, I don't know. He said something about he's going to steal a mirror and then he's going to pee red. And that's when I decided to walk away. It was just so funny. Like everyone has this disconnect when talking with Leon. The only person who does not is Elliot.
Yeah.
Elliot and Leon somehow get each other, which I love. The other scene that was kind of funny was when Darlene just starts celebrating like crazy in the park. And then Dom's just like, everybody's looking at us. And she's like, I don't give a fuck. Fuck yeah, bitches. And he just starts screaming. And then Dom just looks so embarrassed. But then Darlene doesn't care. They're such an odd couple that, I don't know. They really
fun.
work well together.
But also before that, when Darlene's like, okay, watch and see what happens. And DP's like, what did you do?
Yeah.
What law did you break? And she's like, chill, dude.
She's like, when are you going to stop doing this?
Let it
Darlene?
happen.
I want to start using Steal a Mirror when I need to go to the bathroom.
I don't get the reference at all.
It's from a Kurt Vonnegut book, Breakfast of Champions, I think is the name of the book. And there's like a character who says, oh, I have to go take a leak. And this other character says, where I'm from, they call that stealing a mirror. And that's basically the interaction.
I guess I'm wondering what the actual phrase comes from.
Like, it's just something he
it?
wrote in the book. I don't think they give
phrase.
any background, just whatever place that guy's from. He says that's our phrase for going to the bathroom.
Kurt Vonnegut always creates these like alternate religions and alternate cultures where it's just like brand new stuff. And so Steal a Mirror is not a reference to anything. Mm-hmm. It's literally how in this other culture someone would say like go to the bathroom. Gotcha. And then Leon just like appropriated that.
Love that.
It's interesting how Sam Esmail likes to take these maybe like tropes or stereotypes about certain characters and flip them on their head. You take Vera and you're like, okay, he's a typical, coked out drug dealer. But he's actually incredibly complex.
He's a philosopher.
He's a philosopher who's looking for a purpose in life, and he felt like his purpose was the altar of Elliot.
From all the stars in the cosmos, our stars cross tonight.
It's crazy. Like Vera is one of my favorite characters ever. And then there's Leon, who, was complaining about the illiteracy of the youth in this episode.
I love that.
It's so hilarious that...
Well, it's just thinking about him, like, reading, watching Seinfeld on, like, one hand, and then, like, straight up being, like, an assassin the other half of his day.
Gotta keep an open mind to opportunities, Swetha.
Diversify my money revenue.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has some amazing lines. This is when Leon drops him off at the airport, and this is the line that you were talking about earlier that I absolutely love. he tells Darlene, hey, like when you come back, I have some job opportunities for you. And you get to be your own boss because you a boss girl.
Love that. Love Leon.
And I love the recognition of Darlene.
Yeah.
I think for whatever reason, she just has such a low opinion of herself and her self-esteem is low. She just feels like she can't do anything by herself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just couldn't be further from the truth. I think she just needs to build up that self-confidence. So the more people tell her, I think the better.
I hope, and I actually believe that this will not be the last we see of Leon.
No.
I know it felt like kind of a goodbye, but I really feel like he needs to have one more scene with Elliot because their connection is like the most important thing for me as far as the overall story. I do.
Like
Hey,
entire
Mr.
Mr. Robot, Leon and Elliot.
Well, if that's his goodbye, like his last scene is with Dom and Darlene, I'll be a little bit disappointed. His last scene should be with Elliot.
No,
I guess that's
understand
what I meant by that.
Yeah.
I personally think it's going to be brief though. And it's going to be one of these casual things where he says something dope and then exits the scene.
I'm okay with that.
Drops the mic.
I have no problem if like the final scene the show ends with, Leon talking Elliot's head off about some new show he's watching.
That's what I was saying.
I would love that.
It would be awesome to have an epilogue scene
Yeah.
with Elliot and Leon like kicking it.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I think it's just Mr. Robot tradition to have like a after credit scene after each season. I definitely think we're gonna get one for the final season too.
I hope so.
And then we see Dom and DDP at the airport. And I was telling Sid when we were watching this episode, I'm like, they need to be more careful. Dom can't just be like walking around, browsing. And as she's browsing for books, she turns and there's Irving. And once again, Dom has like a panic attack. Like, oh my God, we're caught. What's going to happen? And Irving just kills it in the scene. He's promoting his book, Beach Towel. And I love how he drops a major spoiler about the book.
Yeah.
He's just so
Classic.
excited about it. He tells her what happens in chapter 12. And we see a very important scene where Irving reassures her and says, don't worry, like, no one cares about you two anymore. No one cares about your family. Like, you guys are good. And Dark Army has picked up and skedaddled off to something more important. And Dom tries to ask, like, what are they up to? And he's like, no, can't tell you that. It was just, I think, such an important moment for Dom to get that direct feedback from Dark Army. Like, no, we're done with you and your family's good.
The scene was interesting to me. Like at first watch, I was like, why is DGP willingly giving him all this information about what they did? And like, because there's definitely a chance that Irving, when he left, he was completely cut out of that world and doesn't know what's going on.
That's
I
what
think she just straight up thought, I just got caught.
I know, but I was like, I would never say any of that stuff. Like she's like, I pretty much like killed your people and like betrayed the Dark Army.
But I think this is like going back to all the episodes earlier this season to show how beaten and broken Dark Army made DDP. She's basically Reek.
Yeah.
And when the fuck is his name from Game of
Alfie
Thrones?
Allen? Theon?
No, the guy who did all the stuff to Reek.
Bolton? Ramsey.
Ramsey. In this situation, it's like seeing Ramsey again, and she just goes back to Reek and is like, oh shit, I did all this,
I also think that she probably assumed, like, he knows everything already.
And he did.
But even further so to that point, why believe him?
Yeah, that's one thing. He could be lying. He could be outright lying.
I would never trust them. But anyways, that was my 2 cents.
Let's get some speculation. Where do you think Dark Army moved on to? It seemed like they all moved on to something singular based off what he was saying.
I mean, I just think he means a project.
Yeah, I agree. Project or going, I mean, they're probably the same thing, going after Elliot.
Yeah.
I do not think they will. I think, Swetha, you and I were talking about this, and I said, I think they're going to go to the Washington Township, and then you were worried about Elliot's safety. I think Elliot will be fine because I don't think White Rose will do anything to Elliot.
Yeah.
She knows that he is the golden ticket to make sure her project gets to the Congo as fast as possible. I'm sure she's having her hackers work on the side, trying to come up with their own method, but Elliot's the best at what he does, and he can do it the fastest, and so she still needs Elliot. And that's probably what Elliot's thinking is like, hey, I'm probably safe no matter what.
I guess from my point of view, when they stole all this money from the Deus group, if I'm White Rose, I would think that Elliot's shipping hack has gone sideways already. How can you trust Elliot at this point? He just totally screwed you over.
Agreed. And that's what I was going to say too. I was like, I don't understand this whole situation. It seems like they're continuing to go ahead with the project and launch it or whatever they're trying to do. But I thought the whole point of taking all the money is to put a stop to that.
I personally think that White Rose and the Dark Army are going to Washington Township at least to protect the remaining project. Mm-hmm. And I think what I would do if I was White Rose is like bide my time and collect the resources and the money in order to be able to ship the project again, because right now they don't have any of that. I think Sid's point after we talked after the episode, shipping the project to the Congo doesn't really need a lot of money because they're planning to do it through an army transport, like transporting cargo type of thing.
And it was like a United Nations.
And so slip it under the radar almost, so they don't need money. It was like
humanitarian aid or something for the Congo.
I just think that it would be really foolish to just trust that Elliot hasn't screwed with that plan either.
Maybe.
That's the reason why I'm really worried about Elliot's safety, because if it's the entire Dark Army versus Elliot, that's not great odds. And I don't really understand what remaining value he has to White Rose. I think he has to show up there first. He has to figure out a plan first. And only when he gets additional leverage is he going to be safe.
I'm not so sure. I still feel like White Rose is idealistic in that she feels like if she shows Elliot what she's working on, like she doesn't know that Elliot has these plans. But I think she feels like if she shows Elliot, he will want to help her on his own accord.
Possibly, but that is incredibly delusional after what just happened and they all got robbed. And she knows that Elliot did it. She made
mistake after mistake after mistake the last few episodes, all based off this idea that Elliot is going to believe in what they're working on and will help her out. So
Dom realizes she doesn't have to run away anymore, and this is a scene we were talking about so much earlier. She tells Darlene that she should go on her own. It's interesting, Darlene tells her, you're the one that really needs a break. Like, what are you gonna do? Just go back to the grind? And you carry so much responsibility on your shoulders, and it weighs on you. You need this. You really, really need this. There's another moment where, DDP tells Darlene she should work for the FBI. And I love this. Darlene's like, they can't handle me.
Yeah. That was my favorite line.
As she's like
crying. I know. She's like crying, but someone's like, they can't handle me.
So Darlene.
So Darlene.
Great. By the way, I am so tired of that coat. I want her to burn it now.
I love her coat and sunglasses. It's her look.
She looks a lot like the girlfriend. I'm blanking on her name. The girlfriend in Fight Club.
Oh, no.
She dressed very similar. I think she even had a very similar fur coat like this. So I think that's kind of intentional.
And so the scene ends by Dom saying, I'm not going to go. I have to return back to my work, back to my family. And Darlene heads towards the gate, and right as she's about to board the plane, she starts to have a panic attack, and she runs to the bathroom. And right at this moment, DDP realizes, okay, I actually want to go on this trip. And she starts to run toward the gate, and I got really mad at myself because I feel like I fall for it every single time with Mr. Robot, where they always trick me. I actually thought that they were going to meet up and somehow they were both going to go on this trip together.
Me too. Wishful thinking.
But yeah, surprisingly, DDP gets on board and Darlene realizes in the bathroom, okay, I really don't want to go on this trip, and has a really, really important moment of self-realization where she realizes, I can take care of myself. I think this is a huge moment for Darlene. The tough thing is she's going to go help Elliot. I wish she would do something else. But I think, she feels obligated enough and she's worried enough about her brother that I think the first thing that she's going to do is go find Elliot and help him.
I guess what I don't really understand about this scene, and this is more on DDP's side, she boards a plane. She's there for quite some time and comes to the realization that Darlene is not on the plane, nor is she coming. but she still stays on the plane, and she's flying, she's going to Budapest. So what does that mean from her perspective, like in terms of her and Darlene and her family and all of that? Where does that her story take her from there?
I think for Dom, it's exactly what Darlene was telling her. Like, you have all this responsibility, and that's all you think about. It ties you down, it weighs you down, and you have no life outside of that. Mm-hmm. And I think this was DDP finally letting go. Yeah. At least for like a little bit. Let me just have no worries. My family's going to be fine. My job will be there when I get back. I mean, this investigation is ongoing. Mm-hmm. Whatever. Let me just go and have a break. And that's why I love, as soon as the plane takes off, she opens the book, maybe reads like a few lines, and knocks out and sleeps for the first time in an entire show. As far as we've known her, first time she sleeps. Worry-free. She finally just let everything go and relaxed. And that's exactly what DDP needed.
So awesome.
The scene in the bathroom made me think, do you guys think that there's a reason that Darlene gets panic attacks? Something about her childhood or something traumatic that happened to her?
Definitely. I think they both had a pretty shitty childhood, so I'm sure things that happened to Darlene similar to Elliot. As to exactly specifically what, they've never talked about it, and I thought about that too. I was like, because they didn't really show that the first season. They only started showing her having panic attacks the second season onwards, and I was like, where did this come from? It's interesting. So yeah, I don't think at this point we're going to get any more backstory on Darlene, though. Maybe. I'm not sure.
I also think, as much as I love both individual characters, DDP and Darlene, I'm actually glad that the show didn't force them to be together, because I always thought about their attraction as more one-sided. I always thought that DDP was more into Darlene than Darlene into DDP.
Yeah, and I feel like Darlene was more into Dom out of loneliness and lack of more people in her life, to be quite honest.
Correct, exactly. Where she's like, okay, well, I can make this work, but it wasn't nearly the same level as how she felt about Cisco. And so I'm actually glad that the show didn't go down the Domlene route.
Stan Domlene.
So we didn't watch the preview for the next episode because we wanted the last few episodes to be a complete surprise.
I watched on accident.
It's okay. We do have some feedback.
Oh, we do?
Want to go through the feedback?
Yes.
So, how could you watch on accident? Caught. Red-handed.
So we got some comments from our last podcast from Mark and Bam Bam. They said, you guys are talking about maybe another reveal that maybe Elliot will come to find out that he killed his father. And this is from Mark. I thought that'd be an interesting twist, but I mean, after this entire series, and especially this season, you think Esmail would go down that path? He finds out he was sexually abused and also killed his father in a span of like a week? That'd be so crazy. Or if he also caused Angela's mother's death too? That'd be so much guilt. But maybe then he just resets and the show ends with him back to square one, taking down pedos and talking to us. I struggle with that too, and I think I said that in the last podcast or before that. I don't know. I mean, it was like the first thing that popped into my head when we were watching the episode, and Mr. Robot says we have to show him what he did. And for whatever reason, that popped into my head. Oh, maybe he killed his father. Maybe that's like the last thing. And that's why I was trying to separate the Washington Township leak and affecting all the other people. Because I agree that's a lot of guilt for Elliot to handle, that he did this to Angela. So I was trying to come up with a way where they're separate. But maybe it's not something as dark. You know, the way Mr. Robot said it, it wasn't like it was something horrible that he wanted to keep from him. It was more like they were waiting for the right moment. And even Magda was just like, well, how do you think that will go? She didn't seem nervous or scared. It's just like more curious or apprehensive if that's the best move for their, like, I guess their own well-being. Because it seems like their survival as personalities is on the line, as well as the health and mentality of Elliot. So yeah, I struggle with that too.
I kind of disagree. It may not be so serious and dire as like him killing someone or like, you know, killing both Angela and his dad, but I do think it's something that will kind of shake the ground beneath him, because if it's a great thing or if it's even just like a whatever thing, why do they have to wait for the right time? You know, it doesn't make sense to me. Clearly it's something with quite a bit of weight that will change his perspective on himself or the people around him. I think, yes, it has something to do with himself. or it has something to do with Darlene. I'm not sure, but I just had a wild thought, but I'll share it, but I don't think it's true anymore. I kind of shut down on my own. But it would be crazy if the reveal or something like that, whatever it is that Darlene is not actually his sister. Because there's been a lot of things, like I've said this like 1,000 times now, but keep going back to that damn family picture where she wasn't there. Why does his brain do that? I don't know.
Yeah,
she's
like
adopted or something. I don't know.
I think there's so many crazy directions they could take it. A couple directions I hope they don't take it is that like none of this is real.
Yeah.
That this is all some kind of Matrix simulation.
He's dreaming or something.
Yeah, dreaming, or like what if, that room where they keep meeting Mr. Robot, Magda, and little Elliot, that's the real world, and the world that we see is not real, and they're trying to bring Elliot out. I don't know. I think there's...
What if when Wellick shot Elliot, he's been in a coma ever since?
Yeah, totally.
I think things like that. I mean, I think the reason we're saying we don't want it to be that is because other shows have done it in the past, and it always feels like you're being cheated.
It's weak.
I don't think Sam Esmail will do that. I think he hasn't let us down so far, so I trust him to take us home. But I'm just not sure what it is.
I think I 100% agree with everything Harney said about the reveal about what he did has to be something dark, because if it was something positive, why hide it from his memory? Why wait so long? He's not ready to hear it. He's not ready to hear it.
I didn't say it was something positive, but maybe it's not as dark as killing someone.
That's fine.
Yeah,
maybe it's something more... Yeah, maybe it's something like Harney's saying, like, hey, Darlene's not your sister, or,
But to Mark's point about...
You're adopted.
Can they really wait to, have this huge reveal right at the end of the series? I think they have done that already so many times with all of these other reveals. And so I think it is going to be something big, or at least they've worked it up to be something big.
Oh, it's going to be something big for sure.
Yeah.
We're speculating what it could be, and I think we're talking back the idea that he killed his father. Sounds like,
or like his parents were not really his parents, like they were both foster children or something.
It could be that, but that's like, I mean,
now I'm just going.
That's kind of like a whatever reveal, I guess. Like who cares at that point?
That's
like Ellie won't care. So some other lingering questions that they have, and we kind of talked about this a little bit, but maybe we can revisit. Do we think that Darlene will come back? Since Mr. Robot thinks she's the key to Elliot, why didn't he stop Darlene from skipping town?
I think we all think that Darlene and Elliot are gonna meet again.
Yeah.
And I think I agree with Harney's explanation earlier that I don't think Mr. Robot has full control of the situation at all times, especially not this last season. And I think weighing the pros and cons, he felt like it wasn't the right moment to just jump forward and block the situation and say, Darlene, no, you have to come with me, or you can't go, blah, blah, blah. I think he felt like he had to let it happen. Although I was pretty shocked, actually, in that moment. I was thinking along the same lines. If Mr. Robot thought it was so important to have Darlene around for this reveal, and maybe she's the key to unlocking this other one or introducing him to Elliot, all that stuff, I was shocked that the show was going this way, but I don't think that it would have made sense for Mr. Robot to come out in that moment and somehow awkwardly stop the situation from happening.
I think it could be a scenario now that we're discussing it more. It seems like in that boardroom when they're having that conversation, he mentions something to the effect of, Darlene could be the key to all this. He revealed himself to her. Maybe we should talk to her or something like that. My thing is potentially they don't need Elliot at this point. Just kind of like how we saw in that withdrawal scene sequence where his subconscious is trying to get him to remember all these things about him. Clearly that didn't work. So maybe they're going to try a different route of maybe they need to kind of get Darlene to remember something about herself or about their childhood together to unlock it in Elliot.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, we've always talked about how Elliot cannot be trusted as far as, his memories and what he shows us. But the one person we can trust is Darlene. And she even says that, like, I will be the person who remembers for you. And so, yeah, I like that a lot. Maybe that is the key to unlocking something with Elliot. Another question is something I think I've talked about a few times in previous podcasts. You think we'll find out why Elliot burned down that server room? which made him start seeing Krista? Or did we already learn about this? I hope we find out about this. And I actually think it's key to the show because that led into the Elliot that we see in the pilot. And something happened in between then that caused him to lose his memories. And that blackout, something was important about that blackout. For whatever reason, Mr. Robot or this other personality finally took over and lashed out. And maybe for years, that was the first time it hadn't happened to Elliot. So I think that is a very important scene. I really, really do hope that we get more information about that. And I don't think we've learned anything about it just yet.
Why are you so sure it wasn't Elliot?
Because Elliot doesn't remember. He says they locked me in the server room because they didn't want to work over Christmas break. And
next thing I knew, there were all these broken servers all around.
Yeah. And okay. I was sent to anger management. He doesn't remember at all what happened.
I see. Okay.
So just trying to think about that scene a little bit more. We know that's not Elliot, at least we are assuming so. It may have been Mr. Robot or it may have been this fourth persona. Why do you think that even happened? Do you think what is the point of that? Is it like triggering for him to like be locked in a room like that? Like what caused that person to come out
That's a great
and destroy
point.
everything? Like what is the trigger? Because clearly that has something to do with or is a link to all of this.
Yeah, I never thought about the being locked in the room as a trigger. That's interesting. That actually could be a big part of it. I always assumed it was how they were treating him, and mister Robot got pissed because he was doing his job. You know, he was hired to do a job, and they had a lot of issues that he needed to fix, and everyone else in the office didn't want to be there, and they're pissed at him, and so they locked him like this little kid. Like they're like bullying him, and Mr. Robot's job is to protect Elliot, and so he came out and said, "Fuck this! I'm going to protect my boy by destroying all your servers." That's how I always took it.
Yeah, so that's interesting because is that just like our first introduction into the fact that he has different personas like Mr. Robot, just having multiple personalities, and that's just all it was, and it really isn't like anything to do with this other person that we don't know.
It's really tough to say. I think we just don't have enough information about that particular scene.
There have been moments in Elliot's past, and Angela brought this up when they were in the museum, and he kept saying he was seeing someone and no one else saw it. And Angela asks, "Do you remember that?" And he says, "I don't remember that." So there have been times where he's seeing something and he doesn't know how to process that. This might have been the first time where someone took over and Elliot blacked out. So that could be the significance of the server room. The other thing that I think about is this might have been the first time that something violent happened. And maybe this is, you know, up until that point, we haven't seen, at least the scenes we've seen where Mr. Robot may have taken over, where the father was there or whatever, that it wasn't violent situations. So maybe there's something important about that. And so some of the last feedback, you think the Dark Army are they all heading towards Washington Township to fuck with Elliot? I think we all think that's what's happening.
Yeah.
And so this goes back to what you guys were talking about with Irving. Why do you think the Dark Army doesn't care about Darlene or Dom? They were still accomplices? Or do you think that was just a bluff, so they let their guard down?
Yeah, I mean, anything's a possibility. I think they're being really naive to be like, oh yeah, we're off the hook now. What the hell? No. And they just distributed all their money. Like, I'm sure Mr. Zhang and White Rose as one person is pissed. But it could be the fact that, like, you know what, he's come to terms, like, his project's probably not going to be shipped, like, salvage what we had, as what Sweta was saying, and try to just, like, do it here. I think that White Rose is at a point where he's desperate, and he's not willing to waste any more time, delay anything any further. He's just going to do whatever he needs to do.
The other thing is Dom's whole value was being an undercover FBI agent working for the Dark Army. And now that she killed all those Dark Army agents and there's an FBI investigation into her and the FBI doesn't trust her anymore, what's her value? She doesn't have value anymore.
That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point.
Why would they care about her? It's not like they can use her again. She's never
but just kill her
able to work with her. But why? Why kill her?
Because she has
really
all this
no
information now.
But she already gave it up, right? She gave up everything, and I think they're assuming she gave up everything, and at that point they've already moved on. They probably covered their tracks and everything. Zhang's already been outed as White Rose. I wonder if Irving was partially bluffing. What if he was telling the truth about Dom, but Elliot seeing Darlene is important because they could easily capture Darlene and use that as a threat to Elliot to make sure he goes through with shipping the project. Right?
That's true. Irving did seem interested in her. He was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, is that Elliot's sister over there?"
So I wonder if that's
Maybe.
a partial bluff, and he only said that just because he was on his book tour. He has no Dark Army people without him. What's he gonna do, right? He probably left and called them. And I do think there's something odd about the scene. When he approached Darlene, I thought he was gonna pull something out. He reached into his jacket, and then Darlene did Dom did her little reek thing and shuddered, and then he just kind of said, "I'll see you later," or whatever. Take care of yourself.
Yeah.
I wonder if right after that he calls Dark Army and says, "Hey, Elliot's sister's here. Pick her up."
Yeah, of course. Why not?
Yeah. So yeah, that could be it. They could use Darlene against Elliot, unfortunately, again.
I don't know though. I mean, she was about to board the plane to Hungary, right? So they were willing to let Darlene go to Hungary for a few days. So I don't know. I don't know. I think that there is like an 80% chance that Dark Army does not care about Dom and Darlene anymore.
Yeah, I could see that too.
I think that, like Harney was saying, there's giant wrench thrown in their whole plan, and they have to focus all of their efforts on salvaging the Washington Township. That's the way that Irving made it seem, at least.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you guys want to hear one tidbit from the promo?
I'll let Swetha make the call.
No, why are you picking it on me?
You're a TV sibling.
You're a TV sibling. We'll let the birthday girl decide. Sounds
Okay,
like
I'm
she
gonna
wants to
tell
tell us.
This tidbit I will tell you is there's the scene, a very similar scene set up as to the scene Angela was in with the younger version of herself.
Oh, crazy.
Between, obviously, Elliot and White Rose.
I wish you hadn't told us that. Damn it. That's crazy. Okay, yeah, that's awesome. That'd be cool to see. Elliot in that scenario would be hilarious, though.
It's that
Yeah,
same
like, I'm
room?
not doing
That same, like, red room?
No, just a similar setup.
Similar setup.
It's all
Cool.
dark.
So any last thoughts before we wrap up, guys?
No, I'm sad. It's almost
Yeah,
over.
unfortunately, this will be the last podcast for one of the TV siblings. Harini will be traveling and will not be able to watch her podcast.
I know. It's sad.
Well, maybe you can like dial in somehow from India or something.
Sad days. Yeah, maybe. We'll see.
We are going to miss Harney very much on the last few podcasts. It's been quite a journey.
Yeah. Okay.
This is
I'm not
going
sure
really
how to follow
awkward.
that up, but
This isn't goodbye, friends. It's just a road trip.
it's just a road trip.
One thing.
Yeah.
In the car ride, I loved how they just panned down and Darlene's just like in the back, like sprawled with her Sour Patch Kids.
Yeah. Darlene, so Darlene.
I know.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't think we're going to see Irving again. This is
No,
the last
that
time we're
was
going to
it.
see him. I was not expecting to see him ever again, and this was a great way to bring him back. I hope his book sells well. Beach Towel. Apparently, it's a great stocking stuffer. So it was a nice send off for Irving. A really, really great character, and it added a lot of levity to some tense scenes.
Definitely.
Cool. Thanks for listening, guys. This is Sid.
This is Swetha.
And this is Rini. Bye, guys.
Bye.